Are you looking to stay informed about what's going on in Madison without the media spin? Well, here's the latest news from the Wisconsin Assembly Chambers brought right into your home, directly from the office of your representative, who truly values his constituents' feedback and in always working hard on the issues that matter to you. Welcome to the Ramthun Report.
Hello fellow patriots, welcome to our 32nd episode, and this week we go in depth into some great data and welcome a special guest to the Ramthun Report. This week's hot topics include a look into the legality of the special counsel's election investigation, some alarming data that we are seeing with the WIS vote, and lastly we welcome the Election and Campaign Committee Chair Representative Janelle Branchen to the Ramthun Report. So here's Representative Ramthun with some concerns he has with the report we received from Ledge Counsel on the legality of the current audit investigation.
Hello everybody, today is Ramthun Report number 32 on the docket. We're going to start out with sections of information. I've got quite a few things to touch on today, and if I did it all at once it would be an hour or so. So let's just do one thing at a time. I'd like to begin with a memo that I had received from Legislative Counsel because I made several inquiries about the current process regarding the special counsel and the actions by the organizational committee, the Assembly Organizational Committee, as well as the lack of communication with the Campaign and Elections Committee. The things I asked for is basically this. This memorandum addresses questions you posted relating to the hiring of a special counsel pursuant to a motion approved by the Committee on Assembly Organization, the validity of subpoenas issued to election officials by the attorney designated as special counsel. The memorandum also discusses relevant statutory and case law authority for legislative investigations, including subpoena authority and for entering into a contract for investigative services on behalf of the Assembly. And the memorandum also addresses whether a duly authorized representative of a committee may serve as an agent for the committee for the purposes of issuing legislative subpoenas. So I have this memo, and regarding authority to hire special counsel, it talks at the actions that were taken by the Assembly Committee on Organization on behalf of the Campaign Elections Committee. And the biggest thing that concerns me is 16.74 subsection 1 is cited in their response, and it speaks at about approving contract purchases, but it doesn't delegate authority to another committee to work on behalf of another. So my concern regarding the organizational committee doing what it did without knowledge of the Campaign Election Committee and not really having authority to do that is what concerns me regarding that whole deal. Legislative subpoenas is also touched on here. Legislative subpoena to appear before special counsel is mentioned. Back to the subpoena element, 1331 is the subpoena statute section that is required in subpoenas. It wasn't in Janelle's original 2 subpoenas that she listed. She has that corrected now and apparently is positioned to resubmit those 2 subpoenas. 1332 is also cited, which states subpoenas go through chairpersons of the committee. In the case of the special counsel working for the Speaker, that didn't happen. They didn't go through the Campaign Elections Committee, so I think there's some gray area on that deal. It also says in the description that the House has directed the Speaker to hire work for the committee, which is the Campaign Elections, but the House didn't do that. We, as a body, a full Assembly body, we never approved the actions for hiring. We never approved the contract elements. We never approved the funding elements. So I'm still stuck on and have issue with those actions that don't appear to be supported through statute. It says also that the hiring of the special counsel was directly for assisting the Campaign Elections Committee, and as you saw in Rep. Branchen's press release on Monday, she clearly states that's not the case. So all evidence to the contrary that this special counsel is actually working on behalf of the committee. There's zero communication with that organization, and that's a game-changing situation for me. I've never really came to understand how that's possible, nor do I accept what's happening in this regard. Validity of subpoenas, 1334, 1332, specifically the chair of the committee issue is not being addressed. Got that touched on already. Rights of persons subpoenaed. It doesn't speak at immunity here, but immunity came up regarding concerns if the special counsel does interview any of the people, in this case clerks or mayors from the Wisconsin 5 that were addressed in these subpoenas that I'm not sure are valid or not, they would have immunity. And down the road, when an audit happens and further forensic data is acquired and perhaps additional investigations occur, the individuals who may have done things nefarious and or illegal may not be held accountable for that, and that's a huge concern for not just the chair of campaign elections, Janelle Branchen, but myself as well. So we've got quite a bit of activity around this expression to follow up on. I wanted to bring people up to speed that one of the things I do behind the scenes is this. I'm not the chair, I'm not the speaker, but I'm poking for validation of actions and legitimacy of actions and statute-supported actions. And I've got gray areas all over the place. So this is unprecedented stuff and brand new, and I get all that, but you just can't go off willy-nilly and Lone Ranger on this stuff. It has to be directed by law and statute, and some of these things aren't. So we'll continue to poke for clarity and get answers, continue to push for an audit. That's what the state needs, is an audit to get that information so we can then move it into the judicial process. So thanks much for your time. We'll be talking to you soon. Bye now.
We realize that we are sailing in uncharted waters right now, so we feel it's important that we make sure everything that is happening is done correctly. Which leads us to our next segment, where Representative Ramthun has some very real concerns that need to be addressed with voter data in Wisconsin.
Hey everybody, one item to address as well. I promised in the number 31 Ramthun Report we talk a little bit about voter logs and or in this case the Wisconsin elections WIS vote data file. In this file there are approximately 7.1 million names, and that's more that's in the state of Wisconsin, and it's almost double who are eligible to vote in the state of Wisconsin. So then you would say, why is the file so big? The data file contains inactive voters that are historically no longer eligible for any reason up to and including death. They are, however, still in the same database, and the only difference between a registered voter who is legally eligible to vote and one who isn't legal for various reasons, including death, is the word active and or inactive. They're in the same place with only that difference. They're not even separated out in different silos on different servers. The clerks, the county clerks, in fact, there's 3,138 people in the state of Wisconsin with FIDO key access to go into that database and make changes. You can change someone from inactive to active and right back to inactive after perhaps a voting process takes place to make it look legit and legal, especially to the county clerks. What makes it even worse is a county clerk in Racine County can log in with the FIDO key and password access and change records, allegedly, in Fond du Lac County or Washington County or Calumet County or Sheboygan County. Those are 4 counties near and dear to me. They're part of the 59th. You can't allow that much data contained in one place that's eligible for usage and ineligible for usage. You can't allow it. You can't have it not separated on separate physical servers so that you have separate access necessities. You can't be able to have that many people floating around the state with access to do it. It only takes one. There's 3,138 people that have had or have access to this data. So when you hear things, and you may have seen some things posted on social media about 43,000 people live at the same address, or 23,000 people have the same phone number, or in the case of Fond du Lac County, 257 people have a 99999 zip code, which is not legal, they're still marked as active. And those entries can be used to cast ballots, whether they're legit or not. The county clerk won't know that. The system allows it because it's part of the active list, but technically it shouldn't be used. So this is why it takes me back to why we need this full forensic physical cyber audit. We've got to get clarity in these voter lists for the state at the municipal level as well. These things got to be cleaned up. The individual who led the Government Accountability Board prior to the creation of the Wisconsin Elections Commission in 2014, his last name was Kennedy. And he had also seen that if they don't have the record for registration defined properly, the default date is 1918. And there's thousands of entries under the active file in this database that reflect 1918 as a date. No, the person isn't 102 years old or 104 years old. It's a default date. That shouldn't be allowed as an eligible voter list item. It shouldn't be allowed, but it's happening. So he asked for this to be cleaned up back in 2013, 2014. It's still not cleaned up. So it makes you wonder why things went crooked last November. It makes you wonder why people are suspicious about it. When you have evidence like this, you have no choice but to question how it can't be done right when you have this kind of information that says it's not being done right. So I'm again pushing with Janelle and other members and groups within Wisconsin to get this audit done, because when we peel this onion and get to the core, for those of you who continue to question, there's evidence everywhere. I'm not in a position to prosecute, to file charges and or prosecute as a legislator. I wish I could, because I would. We have to get this information formally identified and handed off to the judicial side of our Wisconsin governance process, and let the judicial process pursue investigations after the audit, and to file charges and to prosecute people. And how those chips fall and how it affects the outcome of the election, that's a little bit too far down the road, but we got to get 2020 fixed before we can move on to 2022 and 2024. That's where I stand. I'm not moving. It's the hill to die on. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great day. Bye now.
It's very clear that the only way to find closure and resolve election integrity concerns is with a full forensic physical cyber audit. Speaking of which, let's let Rep. Ramthun and our special guest, Rep. Branchin, tell you more about that very thing.
Hey everybody, we're back, and today we have a very, very, very special guest with us, Chairperson Representative Janelle Branchin here from Campaign and Elections. It's an honor to have you, Janelle. I know it was a huge week for you. Pivotal on Monday with a very powerful press release that came out and basically called out truth on your side of the story as far as your experiences as the chair not being involved in activities regarding investigations and or anything audit based. So it would be great to have you maybe speak a little bit about how you're feeling about that, and perhaps a little bit more about the definition of what a forensic audit is, because we're both working, you're leading the way here to get that done for our state, and I'd like to have you tell the folks how you see that happening.
Well, Tim, thank you very much for letting me be here today. It's interesting. Here we are, how many months later from one of the most important hearings that we had, I think in March
10th,
talking about CTCL and how they really affected elections. If you have not had an opportunity, I would have you consider looking at the Federalist story that's been printed about how CTCL didn't just affect elections, they bought elections throughout the 50 states. So that being said, a cyber forensic audit that Tim and I have talked about, instead of messing with the definitions, we want to be real clear. It is the physical ballots, which is the gold standard of what the voter's intent is, and it's the machines themselves. Has there been an opportunity to be hacked? We're not saying it has, we're not saying it hasn't, but the most important thing is we do not have a system in the state of Wisconsin to determine if they could be, right? There is the possibility of it. Many of you know that the machines can be turned on depending what age of the machine or what if it's ES&S or Dominion. They could be turned on by cell phones and then having either a router or a link to the internet. The reason that we want to have oversight on the machines is because currently we don't. There's not a process through the Wisconsin Election Commission or the clerks or any of the audits to determine if those machines could possibly be hacked.
And I'll add to that statement, several county clerks in the state run a very tight operation.
Most all of them do. All of them do.
All of them do, essentially. Yet this discussion is not about the specific ballots at their polling place. It's outside, it's on the cyber side, it's the behind the scenes stuff that they're not exposed to. So they can think and believe, and they'd be accurate to say they're doing everything right. They got their T's crossed, their I's dotted, everything's fine here. But that's not where the problems are for them, and behind the scenes and with the cyber element is where the nefarious acts take place, where the illegalities take place, where the manipulation of vote information occurs. And that's why we are fully pushing for a comprehensive, full forensic physical cyber audit. We got to get the details from the big picture, not just elements of it, the whole 9 yards. So the ballots, the machines, which includes the routers and the connectivity to the network. I would suggest also chain of custody elements, process and procedures between how information flows from physical site to physical site. All of that stuff has to be included.
So remember, we now have new technology.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of new clerks in the state of Wisconsin. A lot of the programming is done by the manufacturers, either ES&S and Dominion. They are there for the pre-test, the logic test. They're there on election day and after. So what we're saying as legislators, we have failed to make sure that there's safeguards to see if you go to the scatter logs, if you go to the routers, the IP addresses, we will be able to see that information. Was there any other activity by whom, when, and for how long on the machines? And when we say on the machines, we understand that it's the programming that can be copied, right? So Tim and I are talking in more common terms. But at the end of the day, we need to guarantee that voters have a transparent process to determine that those machines have not had any opportunity, for a lesser word, to say hacked.
Well said. On that note, we're going to call it a day and take care. Thank you again for coming, Chairperson Branchin, the most powerful committee in the Assembly this session, bar none.
We work for you.
Yes. Bye now.
This concludes our 32nd episode of the Ramthun Report. Remember to share this content with as many of your fellow patriots as possible. Together we can truly restore the principles of a government of, by, and for the people. We will see you next week. God bless you and yours always.